Welcome to the Midnight Entrepreneur. I'm your host, Easton Bennett, alongside my fellow co-host, Tyler Sinden. We are both entrepreneurs who are learning, growing, and building our own businesses, and our goal is to share our experiences and knowledge to help you grow and become a successful entrepreneur. Strap in. Tyler, we are back, episode 4. I guess that's our intro now. I read the intro, and then I just say your name, and I say we're back.
Yeah, we are back, though. So how you doing over there?
Good. I've got a couple updates to give. I don't know if we've talked a ton since the last episode we've filmed, but I mean, a couple updates that I can give you. I was on the Minot Air Force Base today shooting, and apparently it's a little difficult to get into that place. You'd think it's a pretty important place. They're just not letting anybody in there. But I had to go through, had to get the whole video production van searched. And
oh, really?
Good. Yeah.
They find anything?
Nope. They're like, you got any guns or drugs? And I said, nope, just nerdy camera stuff. But that's all right.
Nice.
And then
we shot. You made it through.
Yeah, we shot some sewer system, something or another. Some sewer system thing that erects, goes over a manhole, sprays inside. Pretty simple shoot. Nothing crazy. And then another big thing. First podcast sponsor. Not for this podcast, but another podcast we have a sponsor. They want to do 12 episodes, which is kind of big. So that's exciting.
Is that the My Not Business podcast?
Yep. So I won't say the sponsor out loud yet, but I'll tell you after the show. But you probably know who it is.
Have we already talked about it? Yeah.
Yep.
I think you mentioned them. Okay.
Yep. So they want to do 12 episodes, so that's kind of exciting. And it got me thinking about our podcast I wonder what point we have to get to before people start reaching out saying, hey, I want to be on there.
Do we sponsor though?
I don't know. Do we? Maybe if it's for, it's really got to fit our morals, you know?
Yeah. We got to be ethic around it. So
yeah.
And then, I was just thinking like more of it. I don't know. I like the podcasts that don't have sponsors, but at the same time, like a lot of them do, and it helps the podcast out. But I mean, we're probably far away from there, so we'll talk when we get there.
We'll circle back to that one. But that's kind of an interesting topic. It's like if there's a podcast that can be a podcast without, like, it has its own business on the side where the podcast doesn't need to make money, it almost makes more sense not to run ads to stay more authentic to your audience.
Yeah, I think that's what I was thinking. This would be like a good avenue for, and also something that would potentially tie into this episode that we're about to talk about. Yeah,
and that's where we'll have to cross. Maybe there's. But, it's hard when people are like, hey, we'll give you $100,000 if that happens one day. It's like, but we're morally don't want to run them.
Yeah, exactly.
And then go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to cut you off and say that I also had a few things going on as well. And I know I mentioned it on the last podcast as well, where they reached out to me and got the shoots in, and I think they went pretty well. I tried to do as much as possible, go above and beyond with them, but it was just a few small things, so it was tough to go like above and beyond, but I did my best. I think they really liked it, so I'm happy about that.
Yeah, and you sent over that video, and for the people that are listening that don't know what we're talking about, Tyler had a shoot with a new client, got his feet in the door, and now he's shooting some stuff for them. But how did that we didn't talk very much about the second project. So the first one, obviously, I knew about, and then you sent me that second video. How did that second video go?
Yeah, it was pretty good. I just didn't really have much direction with it. It was just like capture some of the like engagements that were happening and just kind of showing that we're out there and, we're involved with the community. And, it's tough to put that all into a video and capture everything where it's just people mingling.
Yeah.
I tried to do my best with it where I had a little bit more dynamic creatives to it instead of just quick cuts. And I added one little section in there that just added a different element to it instead of just a bunch of videos cut together. So it was interesting. I'm fairly happy with it. I sent them to 2 different files. One was without the little creative added into it, and then the other one was with it, and they went with the one added into it. So
really?
Pretty happy about
so they
that.
did post it. And for the people that are listening, it was like So it's a real estate company, but it was like a community engagement video, right?
Yeah, it was kind of a local stroll the streets. Entrepreneurs go out on the street, put up little pop-up tents, and then you can just go out, see what people are selling. They had a friend put up a little pop-up tent for their homemade barbecue sauce.
Okay.
And that was right outside their office. I tried it. It was some pretty good barbecue sauce. And it was just trying to capture, them being out in the community and their involvement there. So
Hey,
that's
I got a
pretty much
barbecue.
what it was.
I got a barbecue sauce client now.
Do you?
Yeah, I was in Fargo. That's how I was in Fargo a couple weeks ago. I've never been into the product space. Like, I don't have a ton of clients that actually like sell a physical product they make. So it's super interesting. And we kind of talked about like the process of making barbecue sauce. But no, that's cool. Really the last update I have is that there's a couple more clients reaching out that want to start a podcast. So I know last episode we talked about the business where you kind of create all these podcasts for different people. So that might be a little bit more expedited than we originally thought.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but I don't know if it's
forward?
Yeah. Do you do it under the current company I have, or do you start a whole separate thing? So that's kind of what I'm thinking about. Do you brand it differently? Probably not. I always get a little too far ahead of myself.
Why would you put it under another one? Maybe let's say I don't understand, which I don't.
Yeah, well,
let's explain it to me why you would do that.
And the main thing I think about the reason you would do it under a different name is in case, say down the road in, let's say a year from now, there's 10 different podcasts that this new company is hosting. Then maybe you have to get into a building where the building, do you label it as the production studio that I currently have where all the other clients are, or do you have it as the own specific like podcast incorporated, and inside of that building is just all of the podcast sets? So that's the only reason that I would really consider it. I don't think it really matters a ton because it's all under the same umbrella company. But like we talked about, I don't know if it was on the podcast, but having that one brand and then kind of branching off into 5 or 6 different avenues, almost as the parent company, that would fall under one of them. But I don't have that many people yet where I need to buy a studio and have a bunch of different rooms. But if it gets to that day, which hopefully it does, then I might have to reconsider.
Yeah. It's seeming like you're moving that way, which is good.
I hope so. I hope I can convince them, because the prices per episode for me to shoot it and everything I'm keeping it fairly slim because it's pretty easy.
Just to start.
Pretty easy reoccurring revenue, where, you just have to film an hour and edit. Depending on these podcasts, sometimes it takes an hour to edit. Sometimes it takes 2, adding all that stuff in. But depending on the length of them, you can hammer them out pretty quickly. And then upselling the services of pulling social clips like we do for this podcast. So that's kind of, that's the one caveat where it's like, okay, maybe you get people in at that lower price. And then let's say it's $100 and whatever an episode, $150 an episode, and you have to commit to 10 episodes, $1,500. But after they do 10 episodes, they're like, oh, we need social clips to start promoting this. Okay, then maybe get them up to $300 an episode. And then they're like, oh, we also need this. We also want you to manage our page or whatever it might be. And it's like, okay, well, then it's this an episode.
Create a website.
Yeah, exactly. But that's down the road a little bit. I can't imagine a lot of the clients that are spitballing the idea will want to go with the full-fledged, hey, we want the full package, produce the podcast. I'm sure a lot of them want to see some social proof, but that makes sense. I understand that.
Yeah. I feel like you're progressing your way there, and I feel like the more that you do get these clients, I think more other people would be interested in it as well, because it's like it eliminates a lot of those excuses to start a podcast. Maybe there's 20 people out there that can't start a podcast because they don't have the equipment, they don't have whatever it is, they don't have the studio, they don't have the lights, they don't have the camera, they don't have the mic, they don't have whatever it takes. What was that?
I dropped a poker chip.
You gotta stop fumbling over there.
Sorry. But they don't have they don't have the equipment. Continue.
It eliminates all those excuses, and then all they gotta do now is just pay you a couple $100, do it for you, do it for them. And they don't even have to edit too. It's like,
and that's
it
where
eliminates a lot of those excuses.
It's because if you're running a business, and let's say if you do $150 an episode, it's like $600 a month. That's not a crazy expense for a business. a lot of businesses, if they're pulling in over 3 figures, is that crazy of an expense for a episode every week?
3 figures.
I don't. Well, that's on the low end. You know what I mean?
Is a lot.
Or 3 figures. That's 6 figures. 3 figures over the zeros. But yeah, I mean, if you're pulling in $100,000 a year, $500, that's only $6,000 a year, which is not that crazy. Well, I guess it'd be $600 a month, so a little bit more, but that's not that crazy of a, what's the word? Investment. That's not that crazy of an investment if you're actually trying to start something. So that's kind of the last update I have as far as that goes. I'm trying to get the ball rolling a little bit more on that, but we'll see how it goes. We'll keep updating as the show goes on, because that's what this show is for, right?
Yeah, documenting our journeys.
No, exactly. I was actually thinking about that earlier today when we were talking about when we were going to record. Is even if this podcast doesn't blow up or anything, we're going to be able to listen back to this 25 years from now and be like, what was I working on then? Oh yeah, I was creating this podcast company. And then 20 years from now, I could be like, oh, yeah, that's what I'm working at right now. Or, yeah, that was a dumb idea. I remember when I had that. So it'll be kind of...
Yeah, you can go back and listen to all the stuff that you said. You're like, wow, I was an idiot.
Yeah, I should just start listening. Every 5 years, I'll listen to all the episodes. And then it could be like, oh, I forgot about that idea. We should run with that.
Yeah, that'd be good to look back.
But let's get right into this week's topic, I think. Unless you got anything else to update us on.
No, I feel like that kind of segues right into our topic, which is, finding unique ways to get new business or clients or leads or whatever it may be. Because you starting that podcast, you maybe did think that it could lead to it, but it's leading to other different opportunities that you maybe didn't even envision at the time.
Yeah, and that's something where I think this topic is it's very saturated in who talks about it. A lot of people talk about how to get clients. How do you get clients through email? How do you get clients through this and this and this? And there's a ton of videos out there on the internet. And this isn't saying what we're about to talk about is the end all be all of, hey, this is how you need to do it. But we just want to talk about our experiences with trying to get clients, what we've seen that works, what we've seen that hasn't worked, and maybe some new ideas on, how can we find these clients? Where are they at? Where are they living? Get them out of the woodworks.
Yeah. And I feel like there's also a lot of those obvious ones that people will always say, like, your website, social media, word of mouth, but we'll try and branch off to other ones that maybe aren't as talked about.
Yeah. And that's where, I say we can probably just talk about like the obvious ways to start for the people that are very basic right now. Let's say they're just starting a business. Those basic ways, probably the number one thing, well, you could argue, but a website and social media. Those are probably the two things. It's like, okay, you have to have these in today's day and age. Would you agree?
I wouldn't say have to, but it's strongly recommended. There are some businesses that can do really well off word of mouth. And that's a lot of the times how a lot of businesses do end up starting to take off. But yeah, especially like this day and age, it's so easy to create a website. It's so easy to create social media handles. Accounts, whatever it is. It's just, you're better off just doing it just because of how easy it is.
Yeah. And that's where a lot of people think, oh, I have to spend $2,000 to build a website. It's like, no, me and you both built our own websites. It costs us $15 a month to host them.
Yeah, somewhere around there.
Well, I guess a conversion rate. What's that, like $85 Canadian?
Yeah, monopoly money. It just depends. Like, there's a few other expenses that go into it, like your hosting, your domain, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like, it adds up, but like it's only a couple $100s a year. And for me, I learned it all online. Like the YouTube's like a great resource. I watched a video, learned it all on there. Like, I went to school for marketing and all this. I didn't learn how to make a website, which is kind of unfortunate. And I ended up making a whole website within, I don't know how long, but it didn't take me long at all. And I just watched one YouTube video.
It's a pretty niche thing to go into for college, I think. What major does that even fall under? Like
what's that?
Web development, something like that?
For there's a lot of different ones. Like, there's software engineer, and I think there's probably like web development. I went in like marketing, but I mean, we had one class where she said to make like a teaser website or whatever. But other than that, yeah, I feel like it just depends. It depends on your school too. Like a lot of
Yeah.
schools will, like more top end schools might get into those weeds where create a fictional website or whatever, because you can create one, say on Wix, and you
Mhm.
don't have to pay for it. It can just be a free one. So
Yeah. And
yeah, I
that's
feel
where
like
just building a website, it's like just make one. And I have a couple clients that don't even have one. We just shot a video for X Golf, and obviously that's a franchise. So they have their corporate website, but they don't have a local website. They just have a Facebook page. So there are scenarios where it makes sense. Like you don't really need one, but for how easy it is nowadays with all these templates and different platforms, just have one. And honestly, I don't even get a ton of marketing out of my website or find a ton of new clients from my website. A lot of the time it's from social media, which is a good transition into social media, I think.
well, I feel like one thing that we like to say is that your website acts as a 24-hour salesman, a 24/7 salesman. It's constantly there, it's constantly up, it's constantly running. And if anyone ever wants to search that, say it's midnight, maybe you are, but maybe you're up at that time, but your website's going to be up at that time. Maybe it's like 3 a.m. Someone
up.
searching for you don't sleep, eh?
Yeah.
Midnight entrepreneur over here.
Yep.
So it's constantly up no matter what. Like it doesn't sleep, you know? So if someone's searching for it, same with social media too.
Yeah,
That's
that is
constantly up in there too.
that's a good I've never actually even thought about it that way. But yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Because I'll get a random email leads or whatever you call them where they fill out your form, and it'll be like late. Like obviously I'm still awake, whether it's like 10 or 11 o'clock at night, but I'm not obviously working at those times. Actually the midnight entrepreneur, I am working. So I'm always working. We're always working. Tyler's always working too.
We don't take days
Yeah.
off.
And midnight's actually when we start. That's why we named the show this. But yeah, I mean, I get leads for that. So yeah, that is a good way to look at it. But you have to make sure the stuff on your website actually is enticing enough for people to want to be a new client of yours. And what I always say is when you go to your website, go to it as someone that is looking to purchase your services and actually role play. Okay, if I was going to go to this website and I wanted to find video services, or I wanted to find a plumber or whatever it might be, go through it like you're actually looking for that and see how simple it is. And you'll actually run into a couple, things, obstacles that, oh, this could be easier if there was a button here, or I could take out this button. And then the other thing that I did with you for the website as far as getting new clients is you went through my website when I built the new website after the old one and just kind of said, hey, you should put this here, or hey, there's a problem here, there's an issue here. So use your resources of friends or family or whoever and see if they'll go through your website for you.
Yeah, I think one of the common things is just doing it yourself. Like they say, go to your website and go to where you want them to, say, submit a contact form or purchase your services, and see how long it takes you, see how confusing it is. And you doing it yourself is a good way to see the process in doing it, see if there's any way to cut out the fat.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's enough on websites because
Yeah, it
websites
is.
bother me. I hate even the thought of building a new website. I'm totally contradicting what I said in the beginning, but it is super easy. It's just annoying to it's so tedious. I hate tedious processes. I'm struggling with my words here today. Got a cat in my hairball in my mouth or whatever the saying is. Let's get into social media though. So social media, I think, is probably the most useful way to get new clients. That's a majority of how I see my new clients coming in, is reaching out via Facebook. Actually is probably the number one thing. And then word of mouth. So a lot of the time people will give my contact information and they'll call me and say, hey, I got your number from so-and-so, or I'll have people reach out on Facebook or something and say, hey, we're looking for this video. And then I move it over to email. But honestly, personally, from my experience, I think the easiest way to get new clients is through social media. And even if they don't come through social media, they'll move into one of the other avenues, whether that be the website or email or phone call. But just getting your brand out there, your business out there, it's so easy to get it out there with social media right now.
Yeah, I think it depends on the service that you're offering. I think for you, social media acts as a really good platform just because you're video based, and a lot of, like, basically all of your projects are on your social media, and that's how you market yourself. So they see your services through your video, and that's a great way to do it. But even if they don't come directly through social media, there's a pretty solid chance that they at least looked at your social media to see what you guys do, just check it out, see if you're active, whatever it may be. There's a very high chance that they do go to your social media to see your services.
I feel like at some point, a potential client is going to hit your social media, whether that be phase one, where they find your social media and that's how they find you, or whether they be word of mouth, where someone talks about you at an event and then they go to your social media to see what you're all about. But I feel like social media is kind of something where every potential client is going to run into intentionally or unintentionally. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. At one certain point or another, they most likely will be, whether they're doing research or whatever it is. I do think so.
So just make sure, and I can't remember where I saw this, but someone was talking about just make sure that you are just alive on the platforms. You don't have to post every single day. Obviously, if you're in a market where posting every day makes sense, then post as much as you can. But we know how hard content creation can be, but you don't want to have, for example, actually, this happened. I'm going to get a tattoo in a couple weeks, and I went to the guy's Instagram page, and he hasn't posted since 2019. And it's not where I live, so I'm like, oh, is this guy even doing tattoos anymore? So just, stay alive on that platform, whatever it might be, just to show people when they do end up running into you on social media. It's like, oh, okay, they're still an active business. Like, they're still doing their thing. Yeah, maybe they haven't posted in a week or two, but they're still at least active on the platform.
Yeah, I think that's a good point.
Word of mouth, probably last simple one that, word of mouth is pretty standard, I would say.
Yeah, just deliver a great experience, deliver good products, and then people are going to talk about you.
Yeah, and I think that's the one thing about word of mouth. It's just, it's those three things: experience, product, and then people are going to talk about it. So just make sure your product is good. At the end of the day, it comes back to that. If you're a really nice person, you can get away with a little bit of a worse product, I think. If you're really great to work with, that might overshadow the quality of work a little bit. But if you can just have a really good customer or client experience, that's how you can really take advantage of the word of mouth.
Yeah, I think to a certain extent, especially depending on your client, if they're a lot more professional, higher end, they might not care as much about the personability.
Yep.
And they care a lot more about the quality. So I think it does come down to the client that you're working with. Yeah.
And if I had to pick one or the other, good experience or really good product, I'm probably going to go with the really good product first. There are a lot of clients that I work with that they don't talk a ton. They kind of want to just get in and out, get the job done. And then I have clients that want to go golfing with me, and I have clients that send me things in the mail just for fun. So it's like, if you can have both, definitely have both. But really, word of mouth at the end of the day is just make sure your service or whatever you are selling is top notch.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that.
Word of mouth, man. I get a lot of jobs from word of mouth, actually. Majority, probably. Yeah, I was thinking about that. That was social media. It's probably word of mouth, to be honest with you.
Yeah, you're just really good at video in that area.
God,
number one guy.
I'm so damn good. People are just like, we need this guy. Only joking, people. We're average at best. We provide average video work for an average price. It's not even an average price either. But yeah, those are kind of the obvious ones. I want to ask you a couple before I get into a couple ways that I've thought to get new clients. But I see on our notes list here, you got Kijiji and Craigslist. Those are kind of the two that I am curious about as to your strategy you've implemented to use Kijiji and Craigslist to get new work.
Yeah, so basically, if you don't know what Kijiji is, it's basically the Canadian version of Craigslist, maybe a little bit less sketchy. But
makes sense.
What my buddy ended up doing was he put his services on there to paint houses. And I'm like, that's not a bad idea. And he was getting some leads through it. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to do that as well. It's just another way to try and get potential leads. So I did it. And I had a few people reach out to me. One of them was very interesting phone call, very awkward to say the least. But that one, I'm looking back on it, I was like, maybe I should have done it just like for the experience.
For the plot.
Yeah.
Do we want to talk about that on the show? I think you told me about it.
Yeah, I did.
Pretty wild.
It was, it was this guy. He I don't know how he got my number. Maybe I don't know. Maybe it's in the ad, but he just straight up called me. He didn't even message me. He just straight up called me and he's like, hey, I'm looking for video and it's going to be a shoot with me and my wife or girlfriend or fiance or whatever it was. I think it was a wife, nothing against the guy. And he didn't want to say the details up front and he wasn't saying it right away. And he was just like, yeah, it's just going to be, me and my wife. And then later we talked a little bit more and like, I'm a fairly awkward person. So like I'm like, when it's silent, I'm fine with it because like I enjoy silence, but like this silence was a little bit awkward, a little awkward, more awkward than usual. Yeah. So he later got into more details about it saying, yeah, it's going to be more intimate and we're going to be nude. And then I was just like, oh God. I was like, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. Like, first off, I'm an awkward person. I don't know how I'm going to pose you guys. Like,
you'd probably have to be nude too.
Yeah, it's the only way to be comfortable doing it.
You're behind the camera and you're like, all right, guys, the only way I can feel comfortable is if I take my pants off too.
Yeah, exactly. So he just slowly got into those details and I'm like, oh man, like, I've never done anything similar to that or anything remotely close to it. At first he was asking like what I've done and then he slowly got into those details and I'm like, yeah, I've never done anything like that. I don't know how good I would be at that. And he's like, yeah, so the last videographer we had, he was a little bit awkward and it didn't turn out very well. So we're trying to find someone. And then I was trying to help the guy out and I just listened to a podcast from my buddy and he interviewed someone that's around here and she does Bordeaux. So it's very similar to nude. And then I was like, I just listened to this podcast. Maybe she would be perfect for you guys. And then it was just like awkward silence. He was like, I don't want that. Like, that's what his awkward silence was. He's like, I don't want that. And I was just like trying to like look it up. And I was just like, the whole time I was just like, I really don't, because this is going to put me in an extremely uncomfortable position because I've never done this before. But after looking back at it, I think it would have made for a great story, a great experience to just like go out and do it.
Oh, an unbelievable story.
Yeah, for sure. So it's like, look back and it's like, this guy kind of wanted me to make a porn video for him. I was just like, yeah. So that was very interesting.
Here's my tips to you. Next time that happens, throw a ridiculous number out there, 10, 20K. Then when they say yes, hire it out. And then you don't even have to do it. Then you just reap the profits. So you say, okay, I'll charge you 10K. Hire someone for 5K to do it. Take your 5K profits for even generating the lead.
True.
Now, would you have paid 10K? Probably not.
Yeah. I was just thinking, like, since I don't technically have a brand name or a business name, it wouldn't deter that. So me going to hire someone out, if I did have that brand or business name, that person might put a bad rep on us, given that bad experience for... he was bad at word of mouth.
Yeah.
The word of mouth for more nude photography or videography for next time, the word of mouth wouldn't have spread. So that's one thing that popped in my mind.
So the Kijiji and Craigslist route, that's something to be weary of, people, when you go through this. They're pigeonholed. Craigslist especially, I guess. I've never used Kijiji, but Craigslist is kind of pigeonholed as one of those places where you can get some crazy ads on there. So I would just be wary of, you might get some unsolicited things such as a nude videographer or, maybe you're a plumber. A plumber is a good example we've been using. Nude plumbing. Maybe they want you to come to your house and just
fix our plumbing.
Yeah. Fix the pipes, man. Fix the pipes, lay some pipes. Yeah, exactly. Pizza delivery, man. Maybe the Domino's people are in here listening. Yeah, but I've never used those two routes. They seem, anything you really go with. I think you can make anything work if you just do it right.
Yeah, my buddy, he did the painting services on there, and what ended up happening with him, he got quite a few leads, but a lot of them were, so he got this good lead, did the project for him, then that guy referred him to another guy, and then that guy just kept referring him. So like, you just find one person and it's word of mouth. So
Yeah.
with that Kijiji ad, I had another lead that came in, and she asked if I could do a football highlight film. So it's
Okay.
just like, you never really know what, because I think I branded myself as like my local area videographer slash photographer. And then I think I said I prefer doing like real estate. And like even in the description, like I say real estate, business, corporate, whatever.
Yeah.
People are going to come out and say other things like, hey, can you do this for us? Hey, can you do that? And judging by those two, I obviously got other scenarios. So
One of them was real estate. You'd be in someone else's property, if that counts.
yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I mean, that's something where you're going to get a lot of, even if you do niche yourself down, it's going into a different avenue a little bit, but even if you do niche yourself down, there's going to be people that ask you to do different projects. I get people that ask me all the time if I do weddings, and I don't. So really, once you get these potential clients, and I know the episode's about getting new business.
You don't yet.
I don't, yeah, what?
You don't yet do weddings.
Yeah, not yet. It's coming. It's down the road. Don't lead the people in, It's supposed to be a big surprise. I'm just kidding.
I know.
It's not at all.
I'm foreshadowing.
Yeah, god damn it. Now the surprise is ruined.
My
But
bad.
well, now the podcast thing might take over the wedding, so who knows. But yeah, if there's going to be people that ask for other things, but hey, new business is new business. You got to decide what you want to take on. Facebook Marketplace, that's kind of like Craigslist. Have you used that at all?
Yeah, it's very similar with Kijiji. I did put it on there as well. I haven't really gotten much traction from there, but I think it honestly depends on what service you're offering
Yeah.
on the place, because my buddy, again, did his painting, and he did get some good leads through there.
And I feel like jobs like that, like services like that, are probably more needed and more well known compared to like video and photography services. Not saying they're not needed, but everyone's going to need a plumber one day. Everyone's going to need a painter one day if they want to repaint. So those ones might be more well known. More people might be looking for stuff on there. Podcasting. So that's kind of an interesting one I can talk about. So podcasting is an interesting way to get new business because, and we had this conversation when I was just starting my first podcast, the Mind Not Business podcast. The reason I wanted to start that podcast was because, and I don't even know if you know the story, but the reason I wanted to start that podcast was to market myself without actually cold calling and cold emailing these business owners saying, hey, let's shoot videos together. So starting this podcast, which the premise of it for those of you that haven't listened is I interview another business owner every week in my local area. And the reason for that is you can kind of gauge whether a person might be interested in your services based on an hour-long conversation with them. So getting these people into the actual podcast set, having them talk about their own business, you can kind of gauge. And I'm asking selfish questions like, hey, what marketing strategies are you using? And yeah, it's good for the audience to listen to that, but I'm also wondering myself. So what type of marketing strategies are you using? What's working for you? What's not working for you? What are some avenues that you can go down? So it's pretty much a discovery meeting, a discovery call, but it's filmed and posted on the internet, which now that I'm verbalizing this, I've just now thought that that's what it is. But it makes a lot of sense because I'm literally asking the questions I would ask if I went to a first meeting with a client.
Oh, really?
A lot, not all of them. Like some of them, are just in there for the podcast, but a lot of the questions I'll ask when I actually go meet with a client. Yeah.
So it's fairly similar.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go in and I'll say, hey, like, have you guys done any marketing stuff before? And they'll say, oh yeah, we did this, this, and this. Or, what are some things that haven't worked for you? What are some things that really have worked for you? So stuff like that. A lot of the stuff like, hey, what's your North Star? Or what's your 3 pieces of business advice? That kind of stuff I don't ask in a client call.
Yeah.
But just turning these cold leads into warm leads, that's really the premise of it. If you can meet someone, start building that relationship, even if they don't want your services right away, maybe 5-6 months, 5-6 years down the road, that person might think, oh, I was on a podcast with so-and-so. I think they do video services. Let's give them a call.
Yeah. I feel like it's a good way to also just get your name out there for brand awareness, because I feel like you doing that, you gain so much more brand awareness and visibility to all the people in the area, because you're bringing on these local guests and they're sharing it with their audience, and then their audience potentially has someone that wants to hire you for your services.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I think that's something that I've really seen. When I originally started it, I did it selfishly. I said, I don't really even care if anyone watches the podcast. I really don't. The only reason I'm doing this is so I can literally have a 30 to 45-minute conversation with a business owner I've never met before. That was the whole premise behind it. And now, just kind of the side effects, I guess you could say, is people will come up to me. I was at the bank depositing a check, and the teller goes, "Hey, you're the podcast guy." And I was like, I've never met this guy in my life before. So there's been multiple times when I'm out in public and people say, "Oh, you do the podcast. I really like the podcast." Or they'll shoot me a message and I haven't talked to this person in 3-4 years, or I've never talked to this person. They're like, "Hey, I love the podcast. Keep it going." So I think the side effect of just, people even seeing that your name is out there, that you're doing things, really goes a long ways. That's probably why I've been pitching a lot of clients, "Hey, start a podcast." Literally just like start filming it. You never know what's going to happen. That's why we started.
That reach is really cool, eh?
Yeah, it's so weird. It works in theory if you think about it. Like when you're planning and you're sitting at your desk and you're like, "Oh, I'm going to do this because this is what's going to happen." And then once you actually see things that actually are happening, and you're like, "Oh, well, why didn't I do this sooner?"
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know.
Excuses, right?
Oh, exactly. You just have to keep coming up with them. So you can make sure all your goals and dreams you just push into the deep, dark depths of the world, and then
they never come true.
Exactly. But yeah, the podcast, I mean, that's been the really big one lately. And even now that it started with one podcast, we co-produced this one, and then I produced 2 others. The other one with just my buddies, people are saying, "Hey, I want to be a guest on your show," or "Hey, I really like your podcast episode." And that's not even related to my video services, but maybe someone that's watching for entertainment has a job one day, and it all trickles back into, "Oh, Easton's that video guy. He produces those podcasts," which is kind of cool. I think it's just getting your name in front of eyeballs and your face in front of eyeballs.
For sure. I think it's a great way for that brand awareness and just, getting your name out there.
Have you heard of Gary Vee's, and I don't want to go too much into Gary Vee, but his strategy, I think he calls it it's something, not the life of the party, but he pretty much says in high school, there was always that kid that was kind of weird and not like super popular. And then that kid started hosting all these big parties, and he became the popular kid because all the popular kids would come to this kid's house for the party. Have you seen that before or heard that before? No. So he talks about that when this was 2-3 years ago, when he was really pushing that everyone should start a podcast, is that he says, "Hey, if you're a new business and you don't have a lot of eyeballs on you, you don't have a lot of connections, a lot of relationships, start hosting the party. Be that not so cool kid that starts inviting all these popular people to do things, and then you become one of them." So having these guests on the show is kind of, not calling myself a not so cool kid, but that's kind of the premise behind it. It's like, hey, if you can...
Big loser.
Yeah, exactly. If you can come be on this loser's podcast, then you become one of the non-losers.
Yeah, that's interesting. I feel like so I was listening to it was a video of these podcasters getting interviewed, and they talked about what the most popular form of podcasting was, and it was inviting guests onto your podcast. And the reach for that is so wide because you bring in these popular people, and then they share it with their audience, and then you get those people, and then it's just this huge snowball effect with bringing these cool kids on, and then they're sharing it with their audience. And then it's funny because at the end, they're like, if you were to start a new podcast, what style would you start? That's what they said they would start.
Yeah.
Even though they said it's like oversaturated and that's what everyone's doing.
Well, it's siphoning people's audiences.
Exactly. But it's everyone's doing it. But it was the like purpose of it. Everyone's saying like everyone's doing it. It's oversaturated, which makes it a little bit tougher for like this specific podcast where it's just you and I. we're not bringing on new guests, and it's just us with our circle. Whereas we're not bringing on these cool kids to share. We just got two losers. And then
Yeah,
it's just like,
exactly.
how are we supposed to reach that wider audience?
How do we get out of it? We can't. We're stuck.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, that's honestly something that's like, I didn't realize this was going to happen. But the first few episodes, well, I'm still doing it, but every episode I drop for the one with guests specifically is I will have $30 and I'll put $30 and boost that post for the new episode drop. So let's say this week we talked about Tony Mueller. He was on the show, and Tony has a whole different circle, a whole different clique of people. And people like Tony. I like Tony because he was on my show. And people like Tony. So the people that are friends with him start sharing the episode, even if they don't give a shit about me, because they want people to see Tony on there. So it's almost just like collateral damage that I'm just like floating with everybody. I'm like, okay, I'll go with this person's audience now. Okay, now we're going back this way. I'm going to go with this person's audience. So it is, and that's all about getting attention. If you can come up with different ways to get people's attention and to specifically other people's friends' attention, then you really hit the honey hole, I think.
There's a few things that I want.
Go ahead.
There's a few things that I want to say off that. It's sure you can have those cool kids come onto your show and they can share it with their audience. But if you aren't providing like that interesting content or that valuable content that makes them want to stay, it's just going to be one and gone, and they're not even going to talk about it later. They're not going to share it with their friends. So it kind of goes back to our old podcast where it's not who you know, it's what you know, or whatever the saying was. You got to have those skills and you got to have that quality content there to back it up.
And I think it all stems from having a good product.
Yeah,
it's like what we talked about earlier in the podcast. If your questions for your guests and everything suck, then it's not going to work. So start with that. Start with a good podcast. Yeah.
Or if you're a shitty podcast host, which luckily you're not. So the other,
you're not either,
question
man.
Thank you. I feel like I am, but the other question I wanted to get into was, do you find that boosted ad spend, it pays for itself or helps or is beneficial? What do you think of that? I'm interested to hear about that.
I think it is very beneficial. And $30, if you think about that, that's like what, $1,500 a year if you do it once a week. I think it's a super beneficial way to get your name out there. There were a couple episodes where I didn't do it, where it's like, okay, I get whatever it might be, 1,500 to 1,000 impressions on a Facebook post. Now with this $30, I'm getting anywhere from 4,000 to 7,000. So just getting those different audiences, and a lot of the thing is getting new people to come to the page. So there's a lot of Facebook ads you can run, and you can boost posts where you need people to click a button or they want you to send them a message. All the ones I do is just boosted to get in front of eyeballs. I have no call to action for them. And that 500 to 1,000 people that might see it that have already watched the show, watched all the previous episodes, the excess on top of that, the 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 extra people, those are people that have never seen the show ever before. And I really run the boosted ads to target the specific demographic that I think would like that guest. So for example, we had Becky Domrey. She's a chiropractor on the show. And even though a majority of our audience for the podcast is 75% males, for that specific post, I put all $30 into a audience that was all females that enjoyed female interest, demographics, all of that. So then when I did boost this post and I clicked on everyone that liked the post and shared the post to invite them to the page, it was all names I've never seen before, and it was all females. A majority of them were females. So that's where I think I was a little skeptical about it at first because I've never had an experience with Facebook ads really. And I'm like, where's this money really going? But after doing that for, I think we've done 17 episodes now, the $30 goes up so long, goes such a long ways.
I was going to ask you, getting more into the weeds of it, but we don't have to go there. It seems like you go for reach for the boost, not for like link clicks or anything. Okay.
Yep. And that's mainly because I want to provide as much value as I can, because I know the people that want video services, a majority of the people watching the podcast aren't going to need video services. The people that need the video services are the people that are sitting in the chair across from me having the interviews. So the people that watch it and share it and listen to it, those are just people that hopefully they find some value. Maybe they start a business one day and eventually 5-6 years down the road, they will want to do some type of video thing. But that's really just growing the personal brand when it's getting to those people. But yeah, that's not really, I don't want to target or have a call to action for those people when I know they're not going to be buying.
Yeah, makes sense.
But yeah, it's a super cool premise. Like Facebook ads are so, if you do them right, obviously you can burn through money going through Facebook ads. But like if you have a specific goal, like that goal is specifically like, hey, get as many people as I can to see this one post. And I could put $1,000 behind it, but if you minimize that cost and you still get some eyeballs on there, that's where you're really going. That's really where you're going to see where the grass, I don't even know where I'm going with that. See where the grass is greener, I was going to say, but that's, who knows?
The ROI is not really there.
It's late in the day. Yeah. $1,000 on one post might not, it's not going to get me 1,000 in return.
Yeah, exactly.
So we got a couple more. Door to door. Have you had any experience with door to door to generate new business, new clients, new leads?
I have not, but I've heard quite a few different people, maybe more so back in the day where you didn't have social media, you weren't able to just slide into people's DMs. I feel like DMs and door to door is very similar.
DMs is the virtual door to door.
Yeah, exactly. But I was also talking to my buddy Eddie in Florida, and he was just saying that when he sets a goal and he's trying to like hit his or close his amount of clients that he wants to land, he's not there yet, he'll say he'll go door to door, and he's not going to try and sell his services. So that's the thing. He's just going to go and introduce himself and then get to know that person a little bit. Just maybe like, hey, I'm Eddie. How's it going? I live over there. And then maybe just sprinkle it in like I do this.
Yeah.
Just so they're aware. And then he has like a cool business card. So I have not. I feel like if it was like do or die, that's when I would probably do it. But I feel like I've never been in that situation where it's like I need to do this or else I'm gonna like, be homeless or whatever it is.
It's super niche on what industries actually need door-to-door sales too. I would never go door-to-door for video services. You know what I mean? Yeah,
that would be tough because it's like they might not even have a job or like they just might be an employee and they're not going to hire you unless it's just, I got plants that I want you to film. It's like that's not really going to happen. And I think another similar one to that is I see a lot of like brochures and, just handing stuff out, putting stuff on a door, like little gift basket or something like that. I think a lot of realtors do that too.
Yeah. And that's where I get, once I bought my house, my realtor sends me stuff all the time in the mail. Like, hey, we got this thing going on, or we got this thing. And I think that's more for the realtors to kind of be in the back of your mind in case you do need to buy another house one day. I think there are specific ways that you can go door to door in every single industry. Video services, you obviously wouldn't do that if you're a corporate videographer like myself, but let's say you're a photographer and you really need some jobs. You could go door to door and say, hey, we're doing 50% off we're doing 50% off for family photos for just this month. Go knock on 20,000 doors and I guarantee you're going to get some people that say yes. So there are specific, there's specific avenues you can go in every single industry that it would work for. It just really depends. I've never had experience with door to door. I've had people knock on my door, but I know it's super popular right now in social media to kind of work on these door to door sales. There's one guy that he films them and puts them on TikTok and
Biggie.
Yeah. Is he I don't know if it's the right guy.
Biggie, the insurance guy.
Oh no, not him. Oh. The guy I'm thinking of does cleans windows. So he goes in and he says, hey, we're doing an offer for the neighborhood that's like $349. Well, it's always $349. He tells everybody that. So he's kind of showing the door-to-door sales process. But it definitely works for certain industries better than others, but it will work for every industry depending on which you go with. But I think it all then comes down to if you're doing door-to-door to get new business, new clients, you have to be good at sales. You got to master that pitch.
Yeah. I think for you, your specific niche, you might be more appropriate to go into businesses and be like, hey, this is what I do and just introduce yourself there. I don't know if you've ever done that before. But I feel like door to
that can be
door
like
for
door to
you
door,
would
yeah.
be. I feel like that would be what your door to door would look like, is finding businesses and just going in there and just introducing yourself.
Yeah. And I don't know if we talked about this in a previous podcast episode, but a lot of these things for generating new businesses and new clients and new leads, these are all, except the door to door, is almost like inbound leads. Door to door would be outbound, so you're actually having to go out there and find them. But another way to do outbound leads, which we haven't talked about a ton, would be to actually go to, where the fuck was I going with this?
I was thinking Google Ads because you were talking about outbound, but I have no idea where you were going with
no,
that.
I know where I'm going with this, is offering free or discounted services in the beginning. And I think we maybe talked about this in a previous episode, but getting your foot in the door, this is kind of like the podcast thing for me, for meeting these business owners. I used to shoot free ads, and pivoting into hosting guests on the podcast is actually my way to get out of offering free services, because I didn't want to shoot a ton of free services just to meet these business owners. So instead, starting the podcast and meeting these free business owners was an easier way to meet them without, hey, I'll offer you this free video. I still do that from time to time. If there is a client that I'm like, hey, I really want to work with them, I'll make sure there's something where we can work out, where it's like, okay, if I can just even land this relationship, it's going to help me beneficial in the long run. But don't be afraid of offering free services or discounted services in the beginning to get your foot in the door.
Yeah, we briefly talked about doing free services just to start out or show what you can do. But a question, do you cold email businesses, or is it like a call, or how do you get new business on there? I know one person came up to you and said, hey, that would be cool if I got on there, but how do you typically go about it, and how does that work for you?
To get people on the podcast?
Yeah.
I pretty much reach out to a majority of the people. There's probably 10 to 15% that reach out to me. Either email, or a lot of them I've not had their contact information, but about the first half of the episodes, I knew of them, or I knew them pretty well. And then from there, they kind of recommend like, hey, I think so-and-so would be really good for the episode. Here's their contact information. Yep. And then there's been a couple people that reach out on Facebook saying, hey, I think I'd be a good guest for the show. Or I had someone reach out on LinkedIn that we're trying to get on the show right now. That's, hey, I'm the marketing manager, the owner of this company. I think would be good for the show. He'd fun to have come on and talk. So I'd say there's maybe 15 to 20% reach out to me and say, hey, can I be on the show? The majority of the other ones, I just reach out. And the nice part about it is people like being asked to do things. They like talking about themselves, their own business. So majority of the times they don't say no. So if you say, hey, so-and-so, you want to come on my show, talk about your business for 35 minutes and how you got into it? Majority of them are like, yeah, I'd love to. And it doesn't cost them anything except an hour of their time. They get free exposure for their business, and I, in turn, get the free eyeballs from their audience.
So that's typically emails, sometimes social.
Emails, texting, social. It's kind of a mix of all of them. But I mean, lately it's been pretty much all over the map. To begin with, it was a lot of emails to previous clients like, hey, I'm starting this new thing. You want to come on? And now it's kind of like, hey, here's so-and-so's number. Or, hey, give this person a call. Or, hey, this person wants to come on, so shoot them an email. So it's kind of all over the map now, which is kind of cool.
I think building the podcast up and getting more viewership there, just more and more people are going to be, coming to you and being like, hey, can I get on the show? And then you're going to get to the point where you're going to have to be like, I need an audition or something like that.
Yeah. Well, and it's like, I don't really want you on my show. But no,
you're going to be a lot more picky with it because you're going to have so many more people, supply and demand.
Hopefully I don't need to ever turn anyone down. I'd love to have literally everyone on the show. Maybe it goes from once a week to twice a week or something. But eventually, you run out of business owners in Minot, I think. Obviously there's a ton, but that is something down the road where it might happen. But yeah, I mean, that's a good list of ways to get new clients, new business, new leads. That's kind of some of the stuff that we have went through. Tyler, is there anything else that you kind of want to talk about on some ways that you've gotten some new leads, new business?
No, not really. I feel like we touched on a good portion of them, and I think just word of mouth and referrals are probably some of the best leads that you can get, just because you got that social proof behind it, and they're saying this guy's really good. So you already got that back behind you, and they already know what you can do. Yeah.
And I think at the end of the day, the main goal is just to have a good product or service. everything will kind of fall in behind that. Yes, there are different strategies you can go to get new business, new leads, new clients, kind of do some tips and tricks to get them into your email inbox or whatever. But at the end of the day, if your product sucks, then is it really going to be worth it? You might do one job with them, never hear from them again. So just make sure you start with that good product or service and then push them into the funnel from there. Yeah. All right, we're at about an hour. Let's give her a wrap. That's episode 4, The Midnight Entrepreneur. If you have any questions you'd like us to cover or answer, you can email us at themidnightentrepreneur@gmail.com. If you found value in the content or found this entertaining, share this with a friend or post it on your story. If you really enjoyed the show, we'd love a rating and a review on wherever you're listening. Talk to you guys next week for another episode of The Midnight Entrepreneur. Talk to you guys next week for another episode of The Midnight Entrepreneur.